because that's another big area as well. Martin Kwebu is a private legal practitioner, and he's been following this case quite closely. He's joining us on Zoom right now. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Ghana Tonight.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Counsel.
Now, listening to the detail as broken down by Dennis, and I know you followed the press conference as well earlier today, has her ladyship, the Chief Justice, done herself and her case any good by addressing the press today, or Ghanaians, the nation today, and putting out this detail, which she says, in her view, it's necessary that the public gets to know how flawed, illegal, and unconstitutional the process she's being subjected to is? Has it done any good for her?
Mr. Okansi, that's $1 million question. To be honest, it's a mixed bag. You can imagine that for her supporters, certainly this would ginger them up, right? And for those who may not support the case, this will not endear her to them. So it's a mixed bag. The jury is still out there, right? Yes. But what we can be certain about is that she's come out with a lot more details than the Supreme Court has given, what do you call it, allows. Because the Supreme Court, through its various decisions, has made clear that we should not leak the contents of the petitions. One, we should not bring out or leak or disclose the happenings in terms of the proceedings whilst they are ongoing, etc. But you see that in the interview, she's brought out a lot far beyond what the Supreme Court has sanctioned. That much we are very sure of. But as to how good it has done to her case, the jury is still out there.
And that particular reference you make about the Supreme Court position on going into the merits of this case, she did it today. In fact, referencing all three details of the petitions and read her responses to them as well, publicly. Would you say that in doing so, she potentially has gotten herself into some contemptuous act, an act of contempt?
Absolutely. She's bordering in that area, okay? Yes, what she's done is bordering in that area, and the word I'm using is bordering because, or as you have used the other word, potentially, because, you know, a person is innocent until proven guilty, right? And we use that principle in contempt cases, even though contempt is not a criminal matter. Some contempts are criminal. Those ones, they are in the Act 29, right? But other contempts who are civil. But whether it is a criminal contempt or civil contempt, we still use the same criminal standard that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. We don't have that. We don't have enough evidence. But at least what we are saying is that on the face of it, she's given a lot more details than the Supreme Court has sanctioned. So in the Justice Derry case, and it's good, this afternoon, an earlier interview with you, you would make a good lawyer someday. You know, you raised the matter of contempt. I didn't quite get it, but let's just say, put succinctly this way. Yes, we are talking about contempt, but it is not the committee that has the powers of contempt. No, the committee doesn't have. So if the committee feels these are contemptuous, then the committee has to refer the matter to the High Court. That's the difference. So when we mention contempt, then quickly we have to add that the committee has no powers of contempt. And so if there's any section in the Justice Paul Derry versus Tiger IPI case, the Supreme Court held that such matters be referred to the High Court, then the High Court will deal with the contempt application. It's not only the committee that has to refer its cases to the High Court. Also in our laws, when you are going for arbitration, when you go to arbitration and then you do something that border on contempt under the
unfortunate. Sorry. Lawyer Martin Kwebu, we lost him there. We'll try to get him back on Zoom. He was making a point there. We'll seek a conclusion to. But we also have Kweku Asasari a former director of the Ghana School of Law, joining us on the telephone. Appreciate your time, sir. And I'll backtrack to that first question that I posed to lawyer Martin Pebo as well. Hearing the her leadership Chief Justice earlier today, an unprecedented move addressing the nation on an ongoing process, which she says, in her view, the public must know how flawed and unconstitutional, illegal this process is, and in her view is skewed towards her disadvantage, and so people must know what's going on. Has it done any good for her?
I mean, it is an established intent.
Sir.
No, the wrong approach. I don't think that this is the first time, that we are witnessing in a purported removal of a Chief Justice. This thing started, way back in 1950 or so, soon after independence and then, the Republic. And, we have the likes of Akukosas and Sarkodie, and therefore, I mean, to say that she's, sounding a caveat or warning, that, Ghanaians must share in this, it's too late, in the day. I think that I share, frustrations with her, but, the path he has chosen is not the right one. The approach is totally wrong. The committee probing the allegations was established by the president. If she has any misgivings, she must address her concerns to the president. Now that the committee is working, she cannot appear in the court of public opinion today and then next day find herself before the committee established to go into the allegations of impropriety against her. I think the two cannot coexist. And being the head of the arm that watches over the justice delivery system, she must be the last person to express disfavor with the judicial process, to express a loss of confidence in the judicial process, to express frustrations about the justice delivery system. It is politically wrong, judicially wrong, legislatively wrong, and the fourth estate wrong. He's gotten it all wrong.
And it's interesting to take this position as well, and talking about this decision by her being constitutionally wrong and legally wrong in your view, and in the fourth estate as well wrong. And Dennis is still with me as we proceed into the other aspects that she put out today about some threat on her life. Exactly what was the context of the threats that she talks about, Dennis?
Well, so that had to do with the calls on her, as she put it, for her to either resign or retire in the face of what all that is going on. She says that loved ones and people who are concerned are actually concerned that she's going through all this process, which she seemed to have issues with. And the police calls to her, urging her to either resign or retire just to end it all. She explains why that should not happen. So let's just listen to her, then we'll come back to the conversation.
Persons who may not know me beyond my public duties, and many who think that since these proceedings seem to be carefully staged to result in my removal as Chief Justice, it would be best if I just retired or resigned, rather than subject myself to an ill-motivated process. I have also received threats and veiled threats to the effect that if I fail to resign or retire voluntarily, I will be made to suffer some harm or the other. I've also heard commentaries in the media about how this process was born out of a stated political agenda to remove me and control the judiciary, and that it is a political effort that can only result in an outcome that was decided long before it started.
Well, Martin Pepo is back on Zoom. Council, we lost you briefly. If you can hear me, thank you for reconnecting. Now, on the back of what Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, just indicated about the threats that she had received and the fact that the calls on her to resign, or she could possibly be exposing herself to some threat. I recall you had made that suggestion to her right from the beginning of this entire process, that she should just resign. She says that is not on the table. It's not an option that can even be considered, and that at the great disadvantage and discomfort to her, she's going to have to marshal all her arsenals and ensure that this entire process goes way through to the end. Counsel.
Yes, yes, the point that it's not open to her to resign is correct in law. Yes, so this is one that on the program, you see that I was in favor of the resignation because I thought it would favor the whole, or it would be beneficial to the justice system and the larger Ghanaian society because it would have brought closure quickly, etc. But subsequently, it turned out there was a Supreme Court decision my attention had not been drawn to. That's the Justice Amwa case. And then later I saw that in the Justice Paul Derry versus Tiger PI case, that one to the Supreme Court repeated that when the processes start, it's not open to the respondent, as the person that's answering and has been accused of wrongdoing, to resign, right? Yes, so that's what the Supreme Court says. But, and that's the Supreme Court is the final arbiter on the law. Except that, the law too grows. The law grows. If you look at the way, this whole trial is panning out, the way Chief Justice Tokono is come out and describe what's happening. I'm not saying that everything she's said is true. I'm not in a position to judge. But I mean the fact that she's describing to us what's going on in there, etc. And the previous, leakages, etc. Then you see that this reinforces the opportunity for a resignation because it helps us. So these Supreme Court decisions, let's see. The Supreme Court has an opportunity to depart from its previous decisions. I'm not saying that in this particular case is going to do so, but it's powers that are in the Constitution. Sometimes looking at the damage, etc., the Supreme Court can look at it and with hindsight try to correct. Because I'm sure at the time we're looking at, or the time the Justice Amwa decision was given, that's in 2015. That's a 2015 decision. Then you come to the Justice Derry one. The Justice Derry one is in the 2015-2016 Supreme Court of Ghana Law Reports. Right, that's volume 2. Yes. Right. At that time, nobody contemplated what is happening now, that a Chief Justice would come out and seek to tell her version. So let's look at it. Going forward, somebody could take it up. But for now, on the authorities, they say that once the process has begun, then the respondent, that's the person who is accused of wrongdoing in the Article 146 proceedings, cannot resign. And this one is not applicable to only Chief Justice Tokono. It also means if, let's say, the Electoral Commissioner were in a trial today, or take the other constitutional bodies, also you have Court of Appeal judges, High Court judges, the OSP, and the NCC. So all the officers who are entitled or who must go through Article 146 proceedings before they can be removed have the same law. That's all of them go through 146.
I see. And Counsel, maybe quickly before I let you go, having described the entire process, the committee some of the members of this committee and the entire work of the committee in these words as you heard her at that press conference earlier today? Would you say it would be to her good to go back and still continue the hearing before this same committee? Or at this point, after this press conference, walk away?
Oh, most probably, if she continued to participate, it would help to ameliorate, that's reduce the damage that will be done to her case, right? If she didn't participate at all. So let's take it this way. Some allegations have been made. It is through cross-examination of the witnesses for the petitioners, etc., that we will get a clearer picture. And also, so generally, you know, sometimes there is bias. So as you are writing the story, there are mistakes. There's also the unconscious bias. So sometimes we embellish cases more than we should unintentionally. So there's unconscious bias that you may not be aware of. So in the zeal, you overstate a case, etc. So through cross-examination, some of these things are taken out. Look, if you want a practical example, remember the National Service Authority case. When the case broke last year, just before the elections, the figures that were mentioned were far higher than the 548 the Attorney General, Dr. Ayene, is taking to court. So these things happen. So if Justice Tokonu stayed, should be able to reduce the impact of the cases, will be able to help, you know, eliminate the mistakes or curb mistakes, etc. They will get a truer version than if she just abandoned it. So it's definitely in her interest to continue to participate. But there's a part, I don't know if you've already referred to it. She said she'll be going to the High Court to challenge some of the unconstitutional actions, etc., that she's saying.
Yes.
So let her have a day in court. Then we'll see how it pans out.
I appreciate your thoughts on this, Counsel. Thank you very much for your time on this. We have still more days ahead of us to get into a bit more detail of what she put out earlier today. Martin Kwebo is private legal practitioner. And Dennis, on that last point about what she's going to do next and what she's instructed her lawyers to do, that's the next phase and the final phase, is it not?
Yes, so she's now heading to the High Court. And in that action, she intends to, in fact, she has indicated that lawyers have filed for a judicial review of all the processes that are ongoing before the committee. Now, many are asking, if you have gone to the Supreme Court, why are you coming back to the High Court? Now, the one at the Supreme Court was in respect of a constitutional matter, where she was seeking an interpretation. Based on that, she filed an injunction. Now, going to the High Court is an administrative matter, where she's seeking to quash the processes that are ongoing before the committee. So, basically, that's the next line of action for her. But mind you, her case is still pending. The substantive matter itself at the Supreme Court is still pending. Not much has been heard about it. But yes, the first step that we are learning today is the fact that she's now before the High Court for judicial review in respect of the same processes that she's contending.
Perfect point. Dennis Poberi, I appreciate you, as always, breaking the matters down for us.
Lawyer who spoke, prophesy into your life. You want to be a good lawyer.
Just as you have inspired me to do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This is the suspended Chief Justice talking about the process or what next she intends to do going forward. Take a look.